What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I've got rather exciting news for you. You see, ladies and gentlemen, combiners are coming back to the Transformers trading card game. Set 2 was literally called Rise of the Combiners, and this might not shock you, it had a bunch of combiners in. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we now have another combiner coming in wave 4. They take a little bit of time off, but it seems like they're always going to come back. So, let's take a little bit of a look at Raider Skytread. A combiner very much in the style of Dreadwing. Not exactly the same, but it's the same kind of deal. We have two 6-cost characters, Skytread Plane and Skytread Tank, and they combine into Raider Skytread. And unless I've missed something, there is no bot mode until you actually combine here, which is a little bit strange. Hey ho. So you start off with Skytread Plane and Skytread Tank. They are both 6-cost characters, which make them the cheapest combiners yet, but it's also very, very strange that the 6 is written with a 5 and a 1. That never happens. That's really weird. That's usually combined for super beefy characters, but hey ho. So if we start off with Skytread Plane, we've got 6 cost, we've got 4 attack, 10 health, 0 defense, which isn't terrible for a 6 cost. It's not great, but it's not terrible. It is a range plane, and it's got the skill. Now, it's a revenge skill. Remember that revenge skills activate when a character is KO'd. And if you have Skytread Tank on the battlefield or in your KO area, you may combine this with him into Raider Skytread. If you do, put the cards from your hand face down under Raider Skytread. That is to say, you take your entire hand and place it face down under Skytread Plane, and then you have no hand. Like, at all. You have 0 cards in hand. Yowza. If we have a look at Skytread Tank, what we see is another 6 cost, and we got 3 attack, 8 health, 3 defense, so you do lose 1 attack, but you gain 3 defense. That actually makes it very beefy. 3 defense on a 6 cost is huge. And it has a very similar revenge skill. If you have Skytread Plane on the battlefield or in your KO area, you may combine this with him into Raider Skytread. If you do, put your entire hand face down under Raider Skytread. Once again, please do bear in mind that this means you will end up with a 0-card hand, which is potentially terrifying. But then when you pull it off, you end up with Raider Skytread, who is again a ranged character, making all 3 parts of the card ranged, though nothing else. 12 cost, because you just add up the other 2, and we end up with 18 health, which is the sum of both of them, 6 attack, and 3 defense. Now, even for a 12 cost, 18 health is very, very high. 6 attack is pretty gosh darn good, and 3 defense is pretty gosh darn good. I mean, if we want to look at a very popular character who's, shall we say, not a million miles away, we could have a look at Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, who comes in at a 13 cost character. And in bot mode, you've got 2 more attack, 4 less health, 1 less defense. And in alt mode, you've got the same attack, the same defense, 4 less health. So for a 12 cost, this is very, very good stats-wise. This is a beefy character. We like it. Now, as it is a combiner, same deal. It begins untapped, has all damage from the combined characters, and keeps 1 upgrade in each slot. Now, what that means is, although the 18 health is extremely high, it's not necessarily amazing, because if Skytread Tank gets KO'd and the plane is undamaged, you start with 8 damage. If the plane gets KO'd and the tank is undamaged, you start with 10 damage. And if the other one is damaged, you start with a little bit more. Suffice to say, it is, yeah. It's a bit awkward, frankly. You're not ever actually going to have 18 health. There is no Enigma card here. You only combine by getting KO'd. But when you attack, you may put a face-down card from under this into your hand. And if you do, you move 1 damage counter from this to the defender. Now, we said that putting your entire hand face down under the combiner when you started was a bit of a pain, and incidentally it is, no argument there. But then by the same token, being able to have a bunch of cards you can play from under him while moving damage is great. And please remember that when we say moving damage, we mean you take 1 off of you and put 1 onto your opponent. It's why Bombing Run is so much fun in plain decks, because you're taking damage off and you're adding damage on. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, it makes a gigantic difference. The question really is, am I willing to give up my hand? Because to be honest with you, the stats are good, and it's only a 12 cost combiner, which gives you plenty of room for other stuff. It's the smallest combiner we've seen so far, a fair bit smaller than Dreadwing. So really the question is, are you willing to give up your hand, and how often do we think it's going to fire? Because the thing is, if you only get 1 attack off, you might put, say, 3 cards under it, get 1 attack off, you get 1 card back, move 1 damage, get KO'd and it's over, and the rest of the cards have just been lost. So there is a real back and forth here in terms of how many cards do I want in my hand when I combine, how much do I want to stash under him, because you only get to move the damage if you put a face down card back into your hand. So you don't want to leave too few cards under, or you won't get the repairing and the damage, but you don't want to put too many cards under for fear that they might be lost. So there are a couple of cards that we can use to try and mitigate this. One of my favourite cards, and a card which I absolutely adore, came around in the Devastator deck. It is Work Overtime. Lets you draw until you got 4 cards in hand. The thing is, if you've got a 0 card hand, that's just a plain draw 4, and when you realise that Universal Network Access is a star card that is a flat draw 3, you'll realise quite how good that is. The other option you've got is System Reboot. The difference, of course, is very little, because they've both got white icons, but this also makes your opponent scrap their hand and draw 4 cards. So the real question is, how often do you want to disrupt your opponent's hand? The last thing you want to do is give them a new hand of 4 if they've got an empty hand. So again, it's up to you trying to decide which decks you think you're going to play against as to which of those is better. The other nice option, which doesn't give you quite as much draw but could be a lot more fun, is Fog of War. Fog of War basically says everybody either draws until they've got 2 cards in hand or discards until they've got 2 cards in hand. So if you've got a 0 card hand and your opponent's got a large hand, Fog of War could be pretty gosh darned awesome. Of course, the thing to remember is, whatever of these cards you choose, these were the options given out in the article, written by the lovely Scott Van Essen, but I do think, and he's one of the card designers, right, you think he would, but I do think he's nailed it in terms of the card choices here. The thing is, you've still got to draw into them, because remember, you're going to start with a 0 card hand. If you don't want to draw into it, we've got some options for drawing, the best of which is Fix It. The problem is, even with Fix It, it's basically System Reboot on a tap ability, but you still need to actually draw a white icon card so that you can actually use Fix It here, and that could be kind of annoying. That's not always necessarily going to work. You could instead go something like Raider Detour, but once again, Raider Detour, firstly, it only draws 2 cards, so it's not exactly quite as good in terms of draw power, but also you still got to grab yourself a blue icon card or you can't use the tap skill. Honestly, you're going to need to do a lot of testing to decide how many cards you want to put under him, and remember, there's no choice, it's your entire hand, but you can try and manipulate it. But the other thing that must be borne in mind is this is going to change. It really depends on how many attacks you think you're going to get off before being KO'd, how much damage your opponent is looking to do, and that is going to change depending on the kind of decks being played, and that's not exactly something which is, you know, it's not going to be easy to predict. You're going to have to look at the meta at any given time. Now, one thing I do like very much is that with having both a tank and a plane, you can sit there and go for a bit of the old two-pronged attack. It's not something we get to use very often, but Two-Pronged Attack is a very nice action card from Wave 3. Choose one of your characters. If it's a tank, your opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand and scraps them. If it's a plane, your opponent chooses one of their characters and does 2 damage to it. If your opponent's got a large hand size, it's really good. If your opponent has characters they really don't want to take damage on, this is really good. Though do please bear in mind, it is up to your opponent as to which character takes the damage. Now, the good news is you are a ranged character, so you've got the other cheeky damage cards. We're talking generally armed hovercraft and marksmanship. Does work quite nicely with Two-Pronged Attack, incidentally. And with your big bad bot mode skill with Skytread, given that that also does a little bit of cheeky damage. Being a tank, you could start playing around with stuff like Hunker Down, but really if you're going to do that, you want to be playing with other tanks. And being a plane, you could go Crash Landing here, which means that when Skytread is KO'd, you would do 4 damage before you actually came up into Raider Skytread. And like I've said, you've already got a bunch of cheeky damage cards here, so I do like the idea here of having a bit of a play around with Crash Landing. It sounds kind of fun. Similarly, Bombing Run could be fun to do a little bit of healing. If the tank is going to be the one getting KO'd, then you can heal from the plane, which will then heal from the Raider. Do remember the Raider is not a plane, so would not be able to use Bombing Run. But really the decision here is if you're playing a plane deck, then you can go for Bombing Run and stuff like that. Whereas if you're going more tank, then you can go Hunker Down. It really depends on the friends you choose for Mr. Skytread here. Now, the other thing to bear in mind, of course, Two-Pronged Attack, still awesome. I like this. I didn't expect combiners to come back soon, but the wording of the article very, very much seems to imply that there is going to be another combiner coming out in Wave 4 as well. And you know that as soon as that is revealed, I'll be showing it to you, because that's the kind of guy I am. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about Skytread, so please go ahead and let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk Transformers and all kinds of other fun things. And do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and so on. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.